All right, so everybody, thanks so much for listening to Fire Breathing Rob. If you're listening to us for the first time, please like, subscribe, and share this interview. We have David Chotka on again. He's the man, the myth, of the legend that we always keep bringing back on. We're very excited about that. And if you want to learn more about David, we're going to go into that in just a second. He has 2 books that I think personally you should read. One is coming out. And David, before we even get into the interview, first of all, thanks for coming on. Can you tell people where they can find more about your material, and also where they can find the first book that we spoke about, and also the book coming out in general?
Well, sure. Actually, by the way, thank you for inviting me back. It's a delight to be here. And so if people want to be in touch with me, it's a very simple thing. You go to my website, Spirit Equip. So the word spirit like in Holy Spirit, and the word equip like in equipment, and put the 2 words together, www.spiritequip.com. And that's my website. And I have blogs there, and there's links to my Facebook page and to the YouTube channel. And there's also links to courses that I do from time to time. But the material that you're talking about, the one that started the whole conversation is this one. It's called Healing Prayer is God's Idea. It's a co-write with a Methodist author from the States. His name is Maxie Dunham. And this book is the one that introduced us, basically. And it contains verified healing stories. And you can get this one on Amazon.com. And all you have to do is take the title, Healing Prayer is God's Idea, and search for it, and it will come up for you. And by the way, I'm going to put it on sale. I'm going to put this on sale for its Kindle edition in November, because there's a conference coming up. And so November 2, 3, and 4, you can get the Kindle for 99 cents. And then in 5, 6, and 7, you can get it for $5 instead of $7.50. The paper is I think it's $11.99 or $12 or something American. And the other one is this one. And this is what launched me on becoming somebody who preaches across the planet and does seminars and events. This is called Power Praying. I wrote this in 2009, but it's also on Amazon.com. And all you have to do to get this is to take the title or my name, David Chotka. And to reach me, it's a very simple thing. You just go to the website and then click on the contact site admin, and away you go. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm doing a conference in Lexington on November 5, 6, and 7 at the Centenary United Methodist Church. I'm going to be talking about healing prayer there. So if anybody's in Kentucky and wants to check it out, believe it or not, it's cheap. There's no charge for the conference. You can just show, but you have to sign up to get in. So apparently they're about 2/3 full, and you got a couple of weeks. So if you'd like to come to that, it would be a delight to meet you.
All right, David, I want to actually go into one thing, and then we'll roll into another. Quickly, for people that have been watching this channel for quite a while, and we do have some loyal people that do watch these conversations. We've known each other for quite a few months now, me and Dave. We've talked off air and on air. David did me a favor the other night, and we're not going to release names, but we're just going to say who this person was. I have a friend that used to be in the police force for over 35, 36 years. He's very depressed. He's went through a lot of traumatic things in his life. He's a very negative person, doesn't really have serious beliefs, was raised a Catholic. Had a lot of people that turned against him, and that's kind of the short story. The long story, the people that are listening to this probably don't want to hear it. It would take a long time. And David knows that firsthand. But that's just the short thing. So we heard, I know this person as a friend. You know this person through meeting him over the phone. We heard together this person that was really struggling with faith, really struggling with life in general, and a lot of physical, mental, and emotional pain. Can you talk quickly? We're not going to get too deep into this, David, but can you talk quickly about this conversation? And, how do you feel? Because we all have these people in our lives that are very negative. They try to take us down with them. And
well, I don't think the guy was trying to take me down. I think he was genuinely grief over all the trauma he'd experienced in life.
Right.
And I can say this to you: those who do not have faith find dealing with difficult experiences in life far more difficult than those who do. Those who do access their faith in order to overcome their circumstances. Those who don't find themselves only dealing with their own resources and they run out. And so what I was hoping to do was to listen to the man as he was venting and get to the place to ask him this simple question: what do you believe? What's your purpose? And he doesn't know. He didn't know what his purpose was.
Right.
And so the only thing to do when you don't know what your purpose is to start to look. There are reasons why you're on planet Earth. And usually it has to do with a cluster of relationships with people with whom you relate. You can live for the day, but the day doesn't have sufficient energy in it to feed you for your life. You need to know that you've got a purpose that you're pressing toward. And if you don't have a purpose you're pressing toward, you won't make a sacrifice. I can just say this to you. I have watched people with nothing realize that someone they love is in trouble, and they rise up and do what needs to be done to help them because the purpose overcomes their lethargy. I've also seen people who have nothing but lethargy, who don't have a care in the world, who just sink down and diminish and die. With faith, you have something to move forward with. Without faith, you're only on your own resources.
Well, I think that, sorry to interrupt you, David, I think this man that we spoke with is the second, issue that you described. He's got everything. He's loaded, millionaire. I've got a beautiful house. I've been there. And he's all alone. His wife divorced him after 27 years. She had enough of whatever. I don't know anything about that relationship. Didn't know him at the time. But he told me that he went to work one day and she took all her stuff and cut out. And that was it. So I understand that he's went through traumatic experiences. But again, you have to try to go out of your way. You've had many traumatic experiences in your life. I've had traumatic experiences as far as my family goes, but you have to find a way to rise above it and try to have those friends, whether it's just one friend or maybe it's a group of friends that try to help us get out of this rut and really rise above this. We hear about these stories all the time of people rising above it. But when you see a person that really has tons of money, that can really be happy if he really truly wanted to, and it's easy to get involved in these circles and go to senior citizen centers and go on trips if you have that kind of money and actually really create some sort of happiness. And go ahead.
Happiness comes from time to time, and it's actually a word that arises from the word happenstance. It means that you trip over something and it's hilarious. Joy is a different thing. Joy is where you make a decision that you are going to be consciously celebrating regardless of external circumstances. And one of the marks of the kingdom of God is not happiness, because people come and go with happiness. They trip over this. And by the way, I can tell you some very funny jokes and you'll laugh and we're happy, right? But it doesn't carry you through difficulty. It doesn't carry you through trouble. Right. If, on the other hand, you understand that there's a purpose in what you're doing, then you can celebrate the fact that you have an internal sense of motivation and drive. And in my case, I really believe it's imperative that you tap into who God is. And as you do that, you get a sense of his direction and his leading.
But David, do you feel like somebody like this man that we both spoke to, they have, and you heard this straight from the horse's mouth, there's really no faith there. This guy's 76. He's kind of a lost cause in a way. I hate to say that word because we shouldn't really call people lost cause, because there's always people that, whether they're 96, 106, or 26, they can always try to find their way toward Christ if they really truly wanted to. But this person seems like they just there's no hope. They don't want to do any of that stuff. They're not going to change at that age. And that's just the line. So
wait. Moses started when he was 80. And so Joshua led the conquest when he was 80. Moses died. Joshua picked up the mantle and away he went. So I don't buy the argument that you're old and you can't do something new. If you just have to know that you're being called to something deeper than you are. And even whether you're old or whether you're young or whether you're middle-aged, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter what your race or color is, what your background is. Yeah. If you are aware that there is divine purpose, people rise above their negative circumstances and start making steps forward. It's when they can't see it that you have this kind of cycle down that happens. When you allow the sucker of the wound to suck you in and take you down. So, I mean, if you think about Moses, just think about this for a passing moment. He was a slave who was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter and got raised with royalty. I mean, think about this. He was set apart to be the king. And then he commits murder because one of his relatives, and it does say in the Hebrew passage, it was a relative of his, was being beat up by an Egyptian. He killed the man, buried him. The matter became known. He had to flee the country. So he loses everything. He's 40, right? He winds up in the land of Midian. And he sees some girls being treated poorly by a bunch of guys. And he must have been trained in hand-to-hand combat because he was a 40-year-old who was going to be the king of a military nation. I think he was a tough jerk. I think so. He beats up whoever the guys were, saves the girls. He marries one of them, and he spends 40 years tending sheep. And there he is out in the wilderness, lost, no purpose, no reason for existence, taking care of sheep. And he meets the burning bush. God speaks to him through the burning bush and calls him back to his roots. And he goes back to the land of Egypt at 80 years of age. And here's what happened to him. He learned how to establish and oversee a nation from Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And he married the daughter of a priest who was the high priest of a nation. And he learned how to be a priest. And then God spoke to him and brought the 40 years of his background with nations, statehood, craft, and so on, and took the 40 years of his being mentored by a priest, married the two things together, and brought him out of Egypt. And he was 80. I mean, we're talking about somebody who should have been done. That's
all right. Well, last point on this man. So, the audience has kind of heard. Obviously, they don't know who this person is. I'm not going to divulge his identity because it's not my place and time to do that. But I think this is a story, to tell about, some people that we do know as family and friends that act the same way. So in closing, what would you tell this person? Like I said, as far as I heard a lot of the conversation, but the audience didn't, of course. So my question is, what would you tell this person in closing? Because they seem like they were not really giving you a tough time, but they felt that they were done. And it seems like they're not really going to rise above, like you talked about with Moses and stuff. There's not, the grid is not there for this man. So,
well, the grid wasn't there with Moses either. It wasn't. In fact,
right.
I mean,
I hear you. I hear what you're going with this, but I'm just saying, Moses and this person is two different people. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I'm just saying, I think, God bless them.
Well, actually, the best example of this is something I watch every Christmas. Have you ever watched A Christmas Carol with Alistair Sims, Ebenezer Scrooge?
Yeah.
He gets visited.
That's what we call him as a nickname.
I guess you could call him that, but the whole point is he's an old guy, he's a miser, and he doesn't give a rip about anybody. He robs his best friend's grave. He takes everything he has. He counts his money and spends his days tallying up the score, keeps hiring this guy for next to nothing, doesn't even want to throw pennies at a Christmas calendar, right? And the whole point of the story is he has 3 encounters. And one was his past, one was his present, and one was the future. And the future was the grave without a future. And he cries out because he realizes that every life should have purpose. And and then at the end of his day, he doesn't save the marriage that died. He's unable to make amends for many of the things that he did in the past. Mm-hmm. The whole point of the story is that a single night and a series of dreams can change a life. Yeah. And in fact, a single event can change a life.
Well, I remember you speaking about your dad and how that changed him.
Yes, my dad didn't believe in God at all. Now, did we tell the story of how my dad became a believer?
Yes.
Okay, well, but he didn't believe in God at all. And he thought it was appalling that his son should be a pastor when he should be a dentist or something, make some money. A lawyer, a dentist, a doctor, something. And so he said, dentist is the best because you work from 9 to 5 unless somebody's got a pain in the mouth, right? So anyway, he told me all these stories about what to do. And then I had this encounter with the Lord. I became a Christ follower. I started to become a disciple in the process. I went into the ministry. But of course, you don't make a lot of money in the ministry.
No.
But there's always purpose. Oh, man, Rob, there's always purpose. In fact, talking to your friend, just listening to him vent. Something happened inside me. Something did. Of course, if you listen just with your ears and process it with your brain and focus on his trouble, you're in trouble. If, on the other hand, you listen to what's happening internally inside you, and the peace rises, and you become aware that you're actually sitting there in the name of the Lord, and he's being present to that person because he wants to give them another shot at life. I don't think anybody should be written off. Right. Nobody.
How do you go through a conversation like that where a guy is really venting hard at you and really stay sane when you have your own, like I said, issues, just like we all have our own issues, and just hearing that negativity and that, well,
look, I'll tell you what I learned. Years ago, I took a course on pastoral care, and the guy who was teaching the course was the chaplain for sex convicts who were in an institute in Toronto. And this guy would have to go behind closed doors with these guys who were they were attempting to rehabilitate these guys who'd raped women and kids and so on and so forth. And they told these horrible, horrible stories about violent abuse that was directed toward them, etc. And one day I looked at him, his name was Father John Roberts. I said, Pastor Roberts, how do you not go crazy? Yeah. When you are hearing about systemic violence against the people who have become the perpetrators of abuse were the ones who received it in the first place. How in the name of all is holy can you sit there and listen to these stories and these guys tell you this stuff? And he said, well, you have a choice. You can either have a sponge spirit or you can have a trampoline spirit. I said, what do you mean? He said, the sponge one absorbs the trouble and it sits in your spirit and then you get depressed. The trampoline spirit is where the trouble hits your spirit and it bounces up to heaven. And then you ask the Lord for it to be a conduit that you can speak to the person in the trouble. And so I never forgot how he said that. And there were seasons where you just have to go off somewhere and squeeze the sponge, because there are times when somebody's story hits you in the deepest heart. But if you're in a place where all that you're doing is absorbing somebody's pain, you're going to be depressed.
Right.
If, on the other hand, you are somebody who is attempting to direct them to an answer, you're not going to be depressed. You're going to be on purpose.
So how do we learn how to do that? Even though we're not pastors, but we, even myself, I talk to this guy quite often. I feel sorry for him, even though he's got a lot of things in life that I don't have personally, but I still feel sorry for him. And I think deep down, he's a good guy and he just has some issues that he still hasn't worked out. So listening to him, and you listen to him, and it can get really tough sometimes to listen to somebody.
You say this, listen, I've heard you. I understand. What's the meaning of your life?
Yeah, but then they come back and they say, you don't understand. You're too young.
Oh, no, I'm not too young. I wish I was too young. So I'm going to tell you a story from the life of D.L. Moody. Okay, so D.L. Moody was a great evangelist from the last century, and this is an answer to your question. And he grew up very, very, very poor. In fact, he grew up with lots of brothers and sisters, and his dad died when he was a little kid, and the creditors came to take away everything, and in fact, they did take away everything. They took even the firewood that they were going to use to heat the house. D.L. Moody had nothing. And so every one of the kids, Moody and his family had one pair of shoes. That's all they had. And so if they went to church, they would carry the shoes, and they'd go in stocking, they'd carry their socks. And when they got close to church, they'd draw lots about who got the pair of shoes, right? It was this terrible kind of thing. They put socks on to go inside the building. Anyway, Moody wound up becoming a shoe salesman. You can imagine that kind of thing. Anyway, he belonged to this little church, and there was a guy in that church that realized he'd never told anybody inside that room about the claims of Christ. And one day, this guy named Mr. Kimball went to see Mr. Moody. Went into the back of the shoe store and led him to faith in Christ. And then he said, well, we got to get you to come to church. So so Moody comes back to church, and he wants to become a member because he's so thankful that they just accepted him. And anyway, he flunked membership class. He was they asked him, what has Jesus done for you? He said, well, I just don't know. I can't remember. And if he said something like, well, he died for me or something like that, that would have got him into the church. So he takes another year membership class, and he was so nice. They just welcomed him to membership, and he started bringing all these kids to this place. All these kids started coming to this Sunday school because he was so delighted they'd accepted him. And they said, you can't bring all these kids here. And so he founded the Moody Sunday School in Chicago, and it created the Moody Bible Church. Well, one day, this guy wanted to go out and present the claims of Christ. And so he takes 2 deacons with him, and he goes out and he preaches. And then he looks at the 2 deacons and he says, the first one says, I hope you never do that again. And then the second one said, you made many grammatical mistakes. You made a lot of errors as you spoke. And then Moody looked at these 2 guys and he said this, well, it's true that I did not speak very well. And it's true that I made many errors in grammar and diction. But you, sir, you have grammar enough. What you going to do with what you got? And that phrase, what you going to do with what you got, is where I would speak to somebody who is purposeless, without meaning, so Moody went on. He became the greatest evangelist of the 19th, early 20th century. He founded the Moody Bible Institute. He founded the Moody Press. He set up schools of training for pastors and leaders. He traveled to England, across the ocean. He came back. He had no education. He had nothing. He was a shoe salesman sitting in the back of a store. And he had no purpose until he realized that he could present the claims of Christ to other people. And he became the great, and he spoke to 2 million people before mass media. 2 million people. That's amazing. I mean, I don't know how many people subscribe to Fire Breathing Rob. I'm sure it's not 2 million. But what I would say to anybody at any stage of life is to tell them the story of how Moody had nothing and look him in the eye, and I would say, look, what are you going to do with what you got? God has given this to you for a reason. God has given this to you for a purpose. Are you going to sit on it? Are you going to do something that's going to leave some value for other people? Are you just going to sit and rot in your room? Or are you going to take hold of what you have and use it to invest in the lives of other people so that they can grow and become strong and healthy and well? And when somebody has a purpose, even if it's a small one, right, they get out of their rooms and they do it. You know, COVID has really not helped us a lot. It really hasn't, because we're stuck in our houses. You know, we can't see people the way that we used to. It's beginning to change now as we're beginning to get out, but there's lots of businesses that are about to go under. There are lots of people who don't know how they're going to pay their bills, and they got kids who need music lessons and they can't give them music lessons now. It would be a very easy matter for somebody in his situation to secretly come alongside some family with nothing and pay for those piano lessons. It would be a very simple thing for somebody with resources like that to discover that there's somebody over here who needs to be involved in a build project and to pay for the lumber or something like this. It would not be a hard thing for that person to do if they knew that there was some kind of a return in their investment. But in terms of this, I just need to know that God's in what I'm doing. That's all I need to know. So I asked the Lord for one divine appointment a day, one time where I can see the hand of the Lord at work and setting up something that I didn't plan. And that was your friend. Because I didn't know the man. You knew the man, I'd known. But as I was talking with him, I heard underneath of all of his pain that there was a yearning to be accepted, that there was a yearning to know a purpose, that there was a longing to try and understand who he was and why he was here in this place called planet Earth. And if all that I managed to do was to say to him, oh, by the way, you can take 2 steps toward this, that was worth the conversation.
David, it's always a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate it all the time, and you always make a lot of sense. And you teach people that maybe don't know as much about religion as you do, the simple things in life. So, David Chotka, again, as we end, can you tell people where they can get the books and also learn more about you in general?
Yeah, so you can get these 2 books on Amazon.com. It's very simple. So one is called Power of Praying, the other is called Healing Prayers, God's Idea. And you just go to Amazon.com and you can look for my name, Chotka. There's only one of those. So that's Chotka. If you Google that, you'll find actually 3 books there. One is a textbook that's way too expensive. You won't want to buy that. It's a book called Sifting Our Discerning. I think it's like 75 or 80 bucks US. It's just, I don't think you should spend that money on that. If you want to do that and you want to read my thinking about how to examine the discernment methods of Don, this is the book here. But it's way too expensive. Anyway, that's the other one. They're all on Amazon.com. All right, you can all get them. But to be in touch with me, the very simple thing is to go to my website, www.spiritequip.com. And there are links there to my Facebook page, to my YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to receive regular blogs. I blog and I post videos from time to time too. And every now and then I plug a guy named Fire Breathing Rob, and I tell people he's a good guy.
All right, that's the plan. That's what we got to keep going. David, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, and God bless.